Anatoly Karpov was the reigning world champion. He had held the title for 10 years. He was considered by many to be the greatest chess player alive. When he sat across from Garry Kasparov for the first time in 1984, Karpov won the first 4 games without losing a single one. He needed just 6 wins to keep his title. He never got them. Karpov collapsed. The match went 48 games. It was eventually abandoned by the governing body, not because anyone had won, but because Karpov had visibly deteriorated and officials feared for his health. He had lost 9 pounds. He looked, by eyewitness accounts, like a man who had been in a war. Kasparov was 21 years old. Garry Kasparov became world champion in 1985 and held the title for 15 years. No one in history had held it longer. He was ranked number 1 in the world for 225 out of 228 months across 2 decades. His peak rating of 2851 stood as the highest ever recorded for 13 years after he retired. But statistics do not capture what it felt like to play him. Grandmasters, men who had devoted their entire lives to chess, who had memorized thousands of positions, who had competed at the highest levels for decades, described sitting across from Kasparov as something closer to psychological dismantling than a game. That is what this is about. Garry Kasparov was born on April 13, 1963, in Baku, Azerbaijan, then part of the Soviet Union. His father died when Garry was 7 years old. His mother, Clara, recognized something in her son early. Not just talent, but an intensity that ordinary children did not possess. At 6 years old, he solved a chess puzzle that had been left open on the family table. He had not been taught the game. He had simply watched the adults play it and absorbed the logic on his own. He joined the Baku Chess Club and was placed under the tutelage of coach Alexander Nikitin. What Nikitin saw was not a prodigy in the conventional sense, a child with unusual memory or calculation speed. What he saw was a child who wanted to destroy his opponent, not to win, to destroy. That distinction would define everything that followed. By 13, Kasparov was competing against adult masters and winning. By 17, he was ranked among the top players in the world. By 22, he was champion. The speed of his rise was not just unusual, it was unprecedented in the recorded history of chess. To understand what Kasparov did to the chess world, you need to understand what chess at the Grandmaster level actually looks like. These are not people who play well. These are people who have spent 20 years memorizing opening theory, calculating 15 to 20 moves ahead in real time, and building mental libraries of tens of thousands of positions. They are, by any reasonable standard, superhuman. Kasparov made them look ordinary. Vishianand, a 5-time world champion and one of the most gifted players in history, described the experience of facing Kasparov directly. He said the preparation Kasparov brought to every game was unlike anything he had encountered. Not just the depth of it, the aggression of it. Kasparov did not prepare to survive. He prepared to attack from move 1 and never stop. Vladimir Kramnik, who would eventually take the title from Kasparov in 2000, spent years studying him before that match. His assessment was simple. Kasparov played chess the way other people breathe, without effort, without hesitation, with complete and terrifying certainty. Magnus Carlsen, the current world number 1, said as a teenager that watching Kasparov's games was the single greatest education he received in chess, not because of the moves, because of the will behind the moves. Deep Blue's programming team, the engineers at IBM, building the most powerful chess computer ever designed, studied. Kasparov obsessively for years before they played him. One of the lead programmers later admitted that when Kasparov walked into the room before their 1996 match, the atmosphere changed. A computer cannot be intimidated. The humans in that room were. In 1999, Kasparov played what many analysts still consider the greatest single game in the history of chess. His opponent was Veselin Topalov, a grandmaster ranked in the top 5 in the world. It was played in Wijk aan Zee, Netherlands. The position reached was one where every computer analysis of the era suggested the game was roughly equal. Then Kasparov played move 24. He sacrificed his knight. Not to gain material, not to force a checkmate. He sacrificed it to open a diagonal and seize a positional advantage. So subtle that no one in the press room could explain what they were watching in real time. The commentators went silent. Other grandmasters gathered around the demonstration board and could not find the refutation. There was no refutation. Kasparov had calculated a sequence, 17 moves deep inside, a position that every engine of the era evaluated as approximately equal. He won. It became known as the Immortal Game. Not his Immortal Game, the Immortal Game, the greatest chess game ever played. Topalov, who played on the other side of the board, later described the moment he saw the sacrifice. He said he understood immediately that he had lost. Not because he could calculate the refutation, because he could not. What separated Kasparov from every other player in history was not calculation. Modern computers calculate faster than any human. It was not memory. There were players with deeper theoretical preparation in specific openings. It was something else entirely. It was the way he made the opponent feel. Kasparov understood that chess is not played between two boards. It is played between two minds. And he was the most deliberate psychological predator the game had ever produced. He stared. Not casually, with complete, unblinking intensity. Grandmasters who had played thousands of competitive games described being unable to look up from the board, because when they did, Kasparov was already watching them. He was studying their reactions. He was reading their body language. He was calculating not just the position on the board, but the state of the mind across from him. Nigel Short, who played Kasparov in the 1993 World Championship match, said he felt physically uncomfortable at the board in a way he had never experienced before or since. Short was not a nervous player. He was the best player in the Western world. Against Kasparov, he said, the game began before the first move. Karpov, who played Kasparov in 5 World Championship matches across a decade, described the experience not as a chess rivalry, but as a war of wills. He said Kasparov did not merely want to win. He needed the opponent to know they had been beaten, to understand it, to feel it. That distinction matters. A player who wants to win stops when the game is decided. Kasparov continued long after the game was decided. He played for total collapse. In 1996, IBM's Deep Blue defeated Kasparov in a single game. It was the first time a computer had beaten the reigning world champion under standard tournament conditions. Kasparov won the match overall, 4-2. He called it a trivial result and moved on. In 1997, IBM brought back a significantly upgraded version of Deep Blue, the rematch. Game 2 of that match became one of the most analyzed moments in chess history. Not because of the chess, but because of what happened to Kasparov. Deep Blue played a move that made no sense. Move 36. A quiet, non-threatening bishop maneuvers in a position where Kasparov expected aggression. He spent nearly 15 minutes staring at it. When he eventually moved, it was a mistake. He resigned the game shortly after. After the match, Kasparov demanded to see the computer's calculation logs. IBM refused. He accused them of human interference. He said the move had been too human, too subtle, too psychologically precise to be the output of a machine. IBM denied it. The logs were never released publicly during the relevant period. What that game did to Kasparov was visible. The man who had never been psychologically broken by any human opponent had been rattled by a machine, or by something he could not explain. He lost the match 2.5 to 3.5, the only World Championship series of his career that he lost. He never played Deep Blue again. By the late 1990s, Kasparov had been world champion for 15 years. He had played thousands of games at the highest level. He had prepared for every opponent so thoroughly that his preparation teams worked for months on a single match. The cost of that dominance was not visible in his results. It was visible in him.